Parents, picture this moment. It's late at night. Your teen is alone in their room. Their heart is pounding. That familiar craving for pornography crashes over them like a wave. And inside their head, a voice starts whispering, "You can't handle this discomfort. Just one quick look. It won't hurt anybody. You deserve this relief right now. Plus, you're already a failure anyway." And that voice, well, it isn't your child's true character, and it's not a moral failing. It's actually a set of automatic, sneaky mental traps that in field of psychology we call cognitive distortions or thinking errors is how we refer to them in treatment. This is the hidden battlefield where so many pornography addiction struggles are either won or lost. And these distortions twist reality. They amplify the discomfort. They minimize the consequences of the behavior, and they push even well-intentioned teens straight towards relapse. Parents, today on the Parent Guide podcast, we are going to do a deep dive into exactly how these mental lies operate in teen pornography addiction and why the adolescent brain is wired to be especially vulnerable to them. And I want to give you some real examples from my clinical practice and, most importantly, some practical, actionable tools that, as a parent, that you can use starting this week to help your teen challenge these thoughts and to build some real resilience to beat them. So if you've ever felt helpless watching your son battle this, then this episode, I hope, is going to give you some clarity, some empathy, some hope. So stick with me here and you will walk away with a much clearer map of what's happening inside your teen's mind, the cognitions, the thoughts, and exactly how it is that you can help them to win the battle. Well, welcome to the Parent Guide podcast, helping your teen to overcome pornography addiction. I am your host, Matt Bulkley, a licensed psychotherapist, and have worked with hundreds of families over the last 25 years through this exact challenge. In my practice, in the office at Therapy Associates, and in Star Guides, our wilderness therapy program, and with use of the recovery toolbox for teens that I developed, one pattern that keeps showing up is that relapse, that concept of relapse, falling back into the addictive behavior, is rarely just about willpower. It's often driven by these faulty thinking patterns that the addicted brain uses to justify giving in to the impulse or the temptation. So understanding these cognitive distortions gives you, as a parent and your teen, tremendous power, the power of early recognition and also compassionate conversations and ultimately lasting change. We're going to cover what these distortions are, and I want to give you the three most common ones that I see teens battling with in their attempts at recovery, give you the neuroscience behind why teens are so susceptible, and 4 expanded strategies that as parents you can use right away. And also when it might be time to bring in additional structured support. So let's dive into this. So let's start with, what exactly are cognitive distortions or thinking errors? Well, think of it this way. They're biased, automatic ways of thinking that make us believe something untrue is absolute reality. And it was pioneered, a couple of psychologists, Dr. Aaron Beck, and popularized by Dr. David Burns in cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT is what it's often referred to as, and these are the brain's shortcuts to reduce immediate emotional pain. So even when those shortcuts actually create long-term harm. So in the context of pornography addiction, cravings create intense discomfort, and the brain, desperate for relief, distorts reality, making the urge feel catastrophic, a single slip seem harmless, or temporary feelings feel like absolute permanent truth. So, and this matters enormously for teens. A study in 2022 by Oz Perlak and colleagues, which was found in the Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Nursing, it found that cognitive distortions explain up to about 17% of the variance in internet addiction behaviors, including compulsive pornography use. So catastrophizing, personalization, and selective abstraction were especially strong predictors. And remember, the teenage brain is still developing, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which handles things like impulse control, decision making, long term thinking. And that's why distortions hit harder during adolescence. And neuroscience reviews, such as the work on internet pornography addiction, show how repeated exposure can hijack the brain's reward system, dopamine system, while weakening those critical breaks. And the result, it's this: distorted thinking plus neurology or biology creates the perfect storm for relapse. But here's the good news. This is where, as I referenced, that awareness helps to interrupt this perfect storm. So let's go through what I have seen as the three most common thinking errors or cognitive distortions that I've seen in recent years with so many of my teen clients. And along with that, share some real world examples and of course details change for privacy reasons and how it is that you can respond as a parent. So number one would be what we call catastrophizing discomfort. So this would be where your teen tells themselves, this is their own self-talk in their head, that the discomfort of the craving or the urge or the impulse or the temptation is unbearable and will never end. It's thoughts like, well, I can't stand this feeling. The urge is going to get worse. And if I don't give in, I'm going to explode. This is where, and it seems like I've had a lot of teens in session tell me, I just can't shake the urge. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger. And the only way I can get it to go away is to act out, is to seek out pornography and have a relapse. And this ramps up anxiety and it makes giving in feel like the only escape. But here's the truth, and this is from behavioral addiction research. Cravings typically peak and fade within 10 to 20 minutes if you can ride them out. It's kind of like waves. The waves come in sets. So applying this to real life scenarios, 15-year-old Adam, he'd say something to the effect to his dad, this feeling is killing me. The only way I can get it to go away is I have to seek out pornography. I have to look. So in his therapy, one of the ways that we intervened there is we worked on trying to reframe that. So in other words, it was, this feels intense right now, but it's a wave. It will crest and fall. And I've ridden it out before. And over time, Adam started timing his cravings and actually saw the pattern that this is true, that about 10 to 20 minutes will peak and fade. And understanding that and actually trying that out, the power diminished, the power of the impulse or the urge diminished dramatically. In fact, there's one of the interventions that I often recommend is what's called the 10-minute rule, which is when the urge or the impulse hits, that I literally have the teen with a timer, whether it's a watch or a phone, for 10 minutes. It's just simply for 10 minutes. I'm not going to act out on this impulse or urge. And during those 10 minutes, to distract yourself with some type of direct connection with another person. And almost always during that 10-minute period of time, the strength of that impulse or urge will fade. It will go from, have them scale it on a 10-point scale. Sometimes the impulse or urge could be an 8, 9, or 10. And if they can just simply, for 10 minutes, pause and distract, that the strength of that urge drops into something that's far more manageable, the 2, 3, 4, 5 range. All right, next, thinking error or cognitive distortion, the just one fallacy. So this would be just kind of this idea that if I look just once, it won't matter. One little relapse or one little viewing episode, it won't ruin my streak. The idea that, well, everyone does it sometimes. And this minimization, it lowers the barrier. So there was a study in 2023 in addictive behaviors that showed teens using these types of justifications were the range of 40% more likely to escalate quickly from a slip into what we would call a binge, which would just be falling into a series of relapses. So it's like the one harmless peak, maybe just looking at thumbnails or not actually clicking. Well, that quickly can move into a full session because permission was already granted. And this is countered by reinforcing the idea that every choice matters. The brain thrives on patterns. So teaching your teen the just one is the lie that restarts the entire cycle. So it's helping them to remember what their why is, what their goals are, what their values are, what it is they actually want in life, and not deceiving themselves with the idea of just one little look won't matter. So then finally, the third most common thinking error, refer to it as emotional reasoning. So this would be something to the effect of, well, I feel overwhelmed, so I must be doomed to fail, or I feel like I need this, therefore I really do need it. Or, well, I feel gross about myself, so the porn will help. And the thing is, these feelings are real, they're powerful, but they're not facts. A study in 2019 was found in, excuse me, counseling, psychology, quarterly found this, that by simply naming and challenging these distortions, that can improve recovery outcomes by up to 30%. So when your teen says, I feel like I can't resist, the response is, well, I hear how strong that feeling is, but is that feeling a permanent fact, or is it a temporary wave that we can ride out together? And this separates the emotion from the actual truth. Well, how these distortions team up to fuel relapse. Well, so think of it like this. These three don't operate alone. They actually team up. So catastrophizing makes the cravings feel endless. The just one makes the action feel safe, and emotional reasoning says, well, the feeling demands immediate relief. And then you add an immature prefrontal cortex along with a hijacked dopamine reward system, and relapse feels almost inevitable. So it's important to realize that we're not necessarily talking about a major character flaw, but this is really kind of the neuroscience together with learned thinking patterns. Well, parents, do remember this. Here, this is the hopeful part, is that recognizing the pattern again lets you interrupt it early, and being able to teach your teen to have that awareness is the first step to rewiring their brain and their response patterns. So let's turn to action here. I want to give you 4 strategies that I use with teens and their families every week, and give you some examples to go along with it. So, uh, number 1 is to create that shame-free, open conversation. You have to be able to create that safe space for your teen so that he can open up and ask curious questions and be responsive to you asking curious questions. So what exactly are you telling yourself in this moment? And on a scale of 1 to 10, well, how true does that thought feel right now? And what would you say to your best friend if they were thinking this? Or what evidence do we have that that thought is 100% true? And these are all CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, inspired questions that help to expose distortions without judgment. So, and the thing is, like, if you, until you can get to a spot that you can have shame-free open conversations, those line of questions are not going to be effective or helpful. So you got to focus on that shame-free place where those kind of conversations can happen. And sometimes they're just simply not ready for that with a parent, and it becomes a more appropriate place for that to happen in therapy sessions. Number 2 is to teach them to label and externalize the lies. So we give distortions names. That's why in the recovery toolbox for teens in the Breaking Free workbook that there's an entire section, a concept on naming the thinking errors. So it gets to the point where the teen can actually, in their conversation, can say, that's catastrophizing talking, or that sounds like the just one trick. Naming the thinking errors reduces their power instantly. And then following up with evidence from past successes. Things like, well, remember last week? The craving passed after just using the 10-minute rule, and reminding them of the success that they have had by labeling and externalizing the thinking errors. Number 3 is a delay, distract, and journal technique. So as I mentioned, delay is powerful. So suggesting this 10-minute pause, and in that process, distraction. So walking outside, doing push-ups, listening to music, maybe a cold shower, journaling, talking to somebody, being able to break that automatic loop, to be able to break them out of the trance, to be able to disrupt just kind of that hyper focus that tends to drive them towards the relapse. So a simple craving journal where they write down what the trigger was, they write down the thought or the distortion, they measure the level of intensity on a 1 to 10 scale, and then whatever action that they took and what the outcome was. And for teens that take that seriously over the space of a number of weeks, they're able to actually see these patterns through journaling, and it becomes visible and more manageable. And then finally, number 4 is building broader support and to model healthy thinking. And this is where I think therapy is so important, is that connect to professional help when it's needed. And sometimes it is. And there's no shame in that. As parents, you definitely model it yourself. So I think you yourself learn some of the names of the thinking errors and can acknowledge it in the context of your own life. So something like, I caught myself catastrophizing about work today, and here's how I challenged it. So you're modeling how it is that you can recognize thinking errors and explain how it is that it's helped you to overcome challenges in your life. And remember, teens, they learn by watching these things. And when they can start to apply that, then you celebrate some of these wins together. Well, when you understand these mental traps, frustration turns into empathy, and you stop battling your teen and you start partnering with them. Remember, stronger thinking patterns mean lower relapse risk, better emotional regulation, and a closer, healthier family. Well, do know if pornography addiction is causing real distress in your home and you've tried parent-led interventions, then don't wait. We know early intervention will work. And so I always recommend using the recovery toolbox for teens, whether it be in a parent-led intervention or in conjunction with a therapist. The recovery toolbox for teens provides a structure that can help in this recovery process. So, and you get the recovery toolbox for teens in the bookstore at the therapyassociates.net website. It's the blue version, includes the Breaking Free workbook, the parent guide, the 101 tips for quitting porn. So, but whether you're using it at home or with a therapist, make sure you get it. It's actually the same curriculum that we use here in the office at Therapy Associates and in our Star Guides program. And for more severe cases where parent-led interventions have not been successful, and even outpatient therapy has not been successful, there are those occasions where you are going to need an intense intervention. And this would be intense behaviors, sexual acting out issues, reckless online behaviors, emotional and mental health crises. And this is where Star Guides, our wilderness therapy program, would come in, where you need a literal reset, a digital detox. Star Guides is clinically proven immersive intervention in a wilderness setting that helps to stabilize and rebuild. So, and you can learn more about Star Guides at starguides.net at the website. Well, parents, I hope that this is helpful. I hope that it gives you some guidance and direction about the thinking patterns that can fuel the addiction, and some ideas on how to disrupt that. Remember, you've got this. Your teen is not broken. They are fighting a tough battle, but you have tools to help them win. Make sure to tune in for weekly support, guidance, research, tips, strategies in this recovery journey. Take care, and I will see you in the next episode.